You have cancer. 3 words that change a life forever. We would like to offer another 3 words. Be an overcomer. Welcome to the 1% Podcast, where our conversations with other cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers allows us to give you that extra boost you need to face your challenge head on, live life from a new perspective, and forge a path that keeps you moving free and clear. Now, welcome your host and cancer survivor, Truett Taylor.
Welcome to today's episode of the 1% Podcast, the show where we interview young adults who are battling or surviving an unexpected cancer diagnosis. You are not alone, and I promise, by consuming today's content, your soul will be fed with the hope, courage, and inspiration you need to keep fighting for today. I'm excited to be on your journey with you today. If you haven't done so already, be sure to head over to 1percentpodcast.com to sign up for our email list to see the latest news and updates for all our guests on the show. You can also check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1% Podcast. If you want to join in on some of our discussions, please join our Facebook group, the 1% Podcast. To contact me directly for content, questions, or booking events, you can email me at info@1percentpodcast.com. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 36 of the 1% Podcast. Today's interview features a remarkable story from Miss Jen Taylor. Jen describes how a simple visit to the dentist led to a 16-hour surgery to remove osteosarcoma from the right side of her face. As we walk down Jen's road to recovery, I promise you don't want to miss a single detail from her story. I love her attitude, I love her mindset, and you will as well. So before we get into Jen's interview, let's go over today's 1% moment of truth. Today's 1% moment of truth is about having a clean heart. How do you have a clean heart? In my current profession, I own a design shop here in Atlanta, Georgia, and oftentimes when I go into a client's home, there's a lot of clutter. And whether I'm doing a complete renovation or a furniture installation, I always look for what I have to remove before we can add the clean, beautiful project we've completed for the client. When it comes down to having a clean heart, the process is the same. We have to remove all the clutter before we can add in the new, beautiful things that we should be holding in our heart each day. Lots of times this is an irritation from others that you can't seem to shake off. This may manifest as, I'm so angry at someone, I hate them, I can't believe they did this. I don't know why anyone would ever, people always, why does this always happen to me? They should apologize, and no one ever. If those are some things that you hear playing over in your mind and in your heart, you've probably got some room to get rid of that clutter and make room for something more beautiful. So here's a couple steps to help you get rid of that emotional clutter and work your way towards a clean heart. The first step is to identify all the baggage and ask yourself what caused it. Just like most first steps, it's probably the hardest, but working through this first step is so powerful. By taking a personal inventory and retracing your steps to see exactly where it came from, you'll find out so much about yourself and you'll go directly to the source of what's caused that pain. For example, it may be an ended relationship from your past that prevents you from having a good relationship going forward. Maybe it's a resentment to your parents for something they did while you were growing up. Take time to jot these things down and go back to the origin, and this will give you a clear inventory of what you need to get rid of. The next step is inquire your heart, or as one of my favorite comedians, John Chris, says, check your heart. What am I getting from this? How do I benefit from holding on to these feelings? For instance, you may feel like you're benefiting because you are owed something. You can wallow in the needy status of being a victim and excuse yourself from doing good things towards these people. But if you really check your heart, in no way are you being successful. This reminds me of a quote that says, anger only poisons those that possess it. So what are you in possession of today? Often our own mindsets like this keep us from God's best. So before you move to the next step, check your heart to see what's preventing you from emotional freedom. The next step is imagine what God has for you on the other side of this. What would it actually be like if I let this go and I had an open, clean heart? In the design process, when I'm meeting with a client and I show them a rendering of what their brand new kitchen will look like, it's probably one of the best moments I have with my clients. The look on the face as they visualize their brand new kitchen is absolutely priceless. So take the same exact process and apply it to your life. What would your life look like when you removed all the anger, unforgiveness, negativity, and you had a brand new, beautiful space where you could store all of your memories and all of your new experiences as you move forward? You ask yourself, how much hope would you have, and how would other people view you a lot differently without all that clutter? So now that you've imagined what it would be like to not have any of that in your life, the final step is to just let it go. Oftentimes, just like step one, this can be one of the hardest parts of the whole process. And if you're like me, you're going to need a little extra help to do that. So here's a quick prayer that I've prayed several times in my life that's helped me to completely let go of the things that I hold inside my heart. Lord, thank you for all the grace and mercy you've shown me in my life. Thank you for the countless moments of bitterness, hatred, and unforgiveness that you've forgiven me for. My prayer today is that you not only search my heart for things I need to overcome, but that you give me the strength and the wisdom to let go of the things that hold me down the most. Cleanse my heart and open up a brand new space so you can provide more love for me and allow me to do what you've called me to do. All right, guys, that's it for today's 1% moment of truth. If you've got a lot of value out of that, I'd love to hear your comments and your feedback. So be sure to just comment on the post on any of the social media sites that we're on, or you can send me an email at info@1percentpodcast.com. All right, are you guys ready for my interview with Miss Jen Taylor? Jen's remarkable journey caught my eye from a few weeks ago when I saw a post in the UK Daily Mail that showed the transformation of her face as she went through this crazy life experience. So when I reached out to Jen, I had an opportunity to really ask her a lot of questions about what happened, how it got started, and we dug in deep. And her story is so remarkable, but her attitude and her mindset and everything that she possesses in her life is such a true testament to how amazing of a person she is. So enjoy my interview with Miss Jen Taylor. Jen, welcome to the 1% Podcast. How are you doing today?
Hey, good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk to you. I've been reading your blog recently, and I saw the piece from you in the Daily Mail, and it really kind of caught my attention. And then somehow we got connected on Instagram as well too. And then the more I read about you, I just knew you'd be a perfect guest for our listeners to really take a lot from your story. You have a very unique story. I've interviewed a lot of people with sarcoma before, but you know, your story is very unique, and all the things that have kind of came after that, and the transformation of you is so beautiful and so inspiring. And I just can't wait for your story to impact the thousands of people that'll hear it. So no pressure on that as far as everything goes, but I'm excited to talk to you. So you're in London, England right now, correct?
Yeah, living in London, although I grew up in Australia. So okay. Maybe a bit of a strange accent between the two of them, but
well, between you and I talking, no one's going to know what we're saying. So we'll
true.
Well, perfect. Well, for the people who maybe haven't read the article about you and stuff, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
So as I say, I grew up in Sydney, Australia, and I moved to the UK about 3.5 years ago. I decided that it was always what I wanted to do. So I bought a one-way ticket and never left.
Wow.
Love it as much as I thought I would. So that's good. I sort of thrown myself into London life, lots of partying and having a good time, which is fun, which then kind of changed a bit when you get told you've got cancer.
I know, right? Party's over then, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Things get a bit more serious.
So what do you currently do for a career right now?
I am a client account manager for an airline security company.
Okay.
Which it doesn't mean a lot, but yeah, I just manage a software and deal with airlines. Yeah.
Gotcha. Sounds like a lot of responsibilities. How old were you when you moved to England?
Must have been, if I can do my maths right, 27, I think.
Okay. Wow. So about 2 or 3 years ago.
Checks out. Yeah.
Yeah. So buying a one-way ticket. So that's a pretty bold move. Like, what inspired you to take that leap?
So my father is British, and so I've got dual nationality. And I think I just grew up feeling like I was British.
Okay.
It's a bit of a weird thing to say, I know, but I don't know. I just kind of was very much associated with that part of me, even though I didn't really know what it meant because I'd never been here. But I think when I was 5, I had 2 goals, and it was to go to university and to move to the UK. So I did it. Yeah.
Perfect. Hey.
Pack up and leave.
There you go. life's all about crushing goals when you're younger, right? And I'm sure when you get older too, but when, we can take a little more risk when we're younger, right? So why don't you start about, I know you've got a wild story. We're going to dig into everything, and it hasn't been that long. Just before we get started, why don't you tell everyone, why do you feel like it's important for you to be able to share your story?
I think cancer can be very isolating when you have it. You sort of think you are the only person who knows what you're going through, which is true to an extent as well, because it is such a personal thing for every person. Two people with the same cancer, the same treatment might have wildly different experiences.
Right.
But my cancer is quite rare, and the demographic for it is generally children and dogs and the occasional polar bear. So being a young adult, I guess, and having osteosarcoma it's quite hard to find other people with the same thing. And like, my treatment was very difficult. Everyone's treatment is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But mine was quite hectic, and my surgery and everything was quite hectic, that I just thought it was so important to let everyone know, what I've been going through. And, from the day that I was diagnosed, I started my blog partially to keep friends and family up to date. So I didn't have to tell everyone separately. Mm-hmm. But it very quickly became like quite a useful tool for talking to people, and not necessarily just as support, but like just getting it out there and letting people know that there are other people going through things. I think like for so long, cancer has been kind of like a shame kind of thing that you keep secretive. Mm-hmm. Go and have your treatment and you come back. And I think a lot of people sort of against that, and talking about everything is important to me.
Yeah, cancer is not easy to talk about either. It's kind of like no one really wants to talk about it that much, because they associate it with pain and death. And when someone brings up the subject, we all know someone who's gotten cancer before, and it makes you think about that, which is not a great place to go lots of times, unless it's a happy story, which, it's not always a happy story. There's not always a great ending when it comes down to people being diagnosed. When I was reading about your cancer, correct me if I'm wrong, because, the internet's not always 100% accurate, but I was reading that there's only about like 300 and something people a year get the type of cancer that you have. Is that correct? Or did I just read that anywhere, or what?
Yeah, you got stats. I was very big on not Googling things about my cancer, which I know is quite rare, but I'm sort of in the dark about a lot of things like that. Because then you get things like survival rates, and they're not great for sarcoma. So we stay away from that. But it is quite rare. So that sounds about right. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll just go with that. Well, let's start about your life prior to cancer. So I know we've talked a little bit about you moving and everything.
Yep.
When you were in your 20s, or let's say when you moved over to London, just in life, what was your lifestyle like? You said you went to university when you graduated. What did you have in mind for your life, and how was like your overall health and your overall lifestyle?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Like anyone's, I suppose. I was working full time. I also worked in my spare time as a music journalist. So I'd sort of be out reviewing gigs 3 times a week or something. So very busy, very active, out having fun a lot. Sort of not really caring much for my health, but I never needed to, it's fine. Never really had to think about it. I was very healthy, which is good. But I was definitely throwing myself into London. Only been here a couple of years, so making the most of it, and lots of late nights and working hard.
This is like a fun job, actually, being in the music industry. I'm sure you met a lot of different people.
Yeah, I got to interview a few of my idols, so that was fun. But I love that. But took up a lot of my time.
Mm-hmm. So you're just living a normal lifestyle, figuring life out, working full-time at a job. What kind of symptoms were you noticing that? I know you had said you went to the dentist before, when I was reading in your blog, and they couldn't quite figure out what was going on. Why don't you tell all of our listeners, like, what is it that you started noticing that was changing, or something that wasn't there, that wasn't supposed to be there, and walk us through that journey a little bit.
So I had no symptoms. I was feeling fine. I wasn't sort of feeling lethargic or any other sort of things that you often hear about leading up to a cancer diagnosis. I was fine. I just noticed a lump appearing sort of behind my nose, kind of above my teeth, on the front of my face. And I was like, oh, I guess it's dental related, because you don't go to a doctor because you have a lump in your mouth.
Right.
To a dentist. So I went to the dentist, and they told me it was abscess and that my tooth was dead and that I need root canal and that they needed to drain the abscess. So they were cutting into the abscess, trying to drain it, to no avail.
Right.
No draining was happening. And so it was about 2 months of sort of going back to the dentist and then still trying to drain it and putting me on antibiotics and waiting for the lump to go down. I never thought it was an abscess. There was no pain. It was just a hard, painless lump. Nothing had happened to my tooth. I was fine. I didn't think it was an abscess, but, dentists know best. But after it hadn't gone down for a very long time, they were like, well, this is slightly odd. We'll refer you just precautionarily. Of course, no one actually thinks that it's going to be anything dire, but yeah, precautionary, referred me to a specialist dental hospital. I went, it was about 2 months until I went there, and he took one look at it and was like, that's not an abscess. It's like, yep, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he got me in that day for a biopsy, which was really good, and a few scans. And then I went away the weekend after I had my biopsy, and I had sort of stitches in my mouth, and it was very painful because I'd gone quite deep to get into the lump to take the biopsy. I went away with some friends, had a great party, came back after the weekend and had my follow-up on the Tuesday. And I remember joking with everyone because I couldn't hide it, so I sort of had to be like, yes, no, I've got a big lump on my face. I've had a biopsy, but it should be fine. I was like, oh, it might be cancer, and they were all like, oh, ha ha ha, don't say that. Of course it won't be. I was like, oh, it might be. Oh, of course it's not. Okay. And I the night before I went to get my biopsy results, I remember saying to my boyfriend at the time, oh, I might call you after if it's cancer. And he's like, oh, don't be an idiot. Of course it's not cancer. It's like, okay, might be. I don't think I ever thought it would be, but just in the it was like, okay, yeah, that's a possibility.
Right.
So I don't know if I'd kind of prepared myself for that or something.
So maybe an intuition, maybe that something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe in there.
I knew it was something more. Well, obviously I knew it was more than an abscess. But yeah, I went in that day, and I think it's I hear about this a lot now, where you have your appointment, but you're left until the end, you're left quite late because the person telling you wants to spend more time with you to tell you properly. So I'm sort of oh, this is taking a really long time. I've got to go to work. Right. Why is this taking so long? I'd seen the guy walking back and forth a bit. It's when is he going to, my time has passed. And he eventually came and got me and was like, oh, let's go upstairs into a private room. Oh, okay.
It's never good, right?
But it was a room quite high up in the hospital. And I just remember sitting there looking out a great view over London and being like, oh, wow, this is a really nice spot. really nice view to have landed up here. always the optimist.
Right.
But yeah, then he told me I had cancer. Yeah. So that was nice.
Yeah. So when you first heard those words, you have cancer, do you remember the first thought that came into your mind?
Yeah, I think I just remember saying to him, oh, okay, cool. Well, what do I do now then?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, are you okay? Like, do you have someone with like who can come and see you? It's like, no, I'm fine. Like, what do I do now? And he's like, he called me stoic, which I quite liked. It didn't mean much to me at the time, but I liked it in hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think he was more worried than I was. Poor guy. Dentists shouldn't usually have to break the news of cancer to people. Right. But also, he didn't really know much about it because dentist. So he sort of asked if I had any questions. I didn't know what to ask. I just sort of said, what kind is it? And so he said, osteosarcoma. Okay. That's kind of the most information that he had about it, really. So, yeah, I guess thankfully after that they referred, as soon as they hear the word cancer, they get moving on things quite quickly, and right. The health system over here is just fantastic. Mm-hmm. So it was sort of a few days later that I had my first meeting with the oncologist, and that was sort of when I actually got some information about it.
So by the time you heard you had cancer, you probably had a couple of days until you saw the actual oncologist, correct? Over those days, does it start sinking in a little bit more, like mentally, like, oh, I have cancer, and like wondering what's going to happen next and all these other things?
I still don't know if it's sinking in. I've talked to a few people about this. That kind of, I think it's a bit of a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. That like inadvertent coping mechanism that you don't really properly take into your brain that you have cancer and that, you know, exactly what that means. It's just kind of like, oh, here's the thing, I'm getting treated. Okay. And like, I don't think I have ever really properly accepted that I have cancer. Mm-hmm. Obviously, like, I'm not in denial. I know very well what it is and what it means. But yeah, I think it was quite a coping mechanism to kind of keep it apart from me and myself. And it was just a thing that I was having to do. But I definitely did not Google, did not do anything like that. Because, I just wanted to wait until I actually had the information from my oncologist.
So you're one of the few people that didn't Google that I've spoken with.
Yeah, I know. It didn't really occur to me to. I just thought, well, obviously the internet doesn't know anything about me or what I've got. So I'd rather just talk to someone who actually knows.
That's a good point.
I'm not one to worry. I'm not a worrier. So I just rather wait until I've got all of the facts from the right source before I start worrying about it.
Mm. So once you started getting all the information, they start talking about treatment. Now, you know, they took a lot of material, I would say, from you, like a big part of your body, right? Like they started digging around, and it's a lot more invasive than you probably initially thought it would be. Yeah. When you started hearing like they had to remove, they removed the top portion of your jaw and your teeth and your bottom of your eye socket. What all did they remove?
First I had chemo.
Okay.
And that in itself was quite stressful, I guess. Well, of course, chemo is stressful, but I thought that chemo was the kind of thing where you have it for one day a week and, you know, for a few weeks or whatever. And when I was told my chemotherapy schedule, that was quite shocking. Mm-hmm. So I had MAP chemotherapy, and it was 24 hours a day for 5 days. And then I'd have that 3 weeks in a row, and then I would have 2 weeks off. Mm-hmm. So I basically had to live in they do it really well at the hospital I was treated at, and they have basically a 4-star hotel that's owned by the government health system, and so I didn't have to be on the ward the whole time. They set me up, and I would have all my chemo and everything in a backpack, and I could go and hang out in my hotel room next door. So I had a degree of autonomy,
that's good.
That kept me going. If I'd had to be on the ward for weeks at a time for 7 months, I would have absolutely gone mad.
Right.
I know some people who had to, and I don't know how they do it. But yeah, so hearing that was quite big, because I thought I could slot it in around my life, but then when I found out it was literally full time, pretty much having chemo and then recovering, and I spent some days I had to get admitted to the local hospital with neutropenic sepsis, with all of my immunity, my white blood cells completely gone. So they were scary times. But yeah, so that was quite full on. And I don't know if it's intentional, but definitely my oncologists and surgeons and all of that they only gave me information as I needed it.
Okay.
So when they initially told me I would have to have it cut out, they didn't really give me any of the details around that. The oncologist explained the chemo, and I started on that, and then he said at the end of that you will have surgery. Okay, cool. At the end of that I'll have surgery. Great. So it wasn't until quite close to the surgery that I started finding out exactly how big it was going to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, they cut out my top jaw. I've still got about 6 teeth on the left-hand side. They cut out from most of my top jaw, most of my teeth, and up behind my nose and my eye socket. So I've still got my cheekbone and my nose, but behind that is being cut out. And they basically took that out, flipped me over, cut out the bottom of my scapula from my shoulder, as well as the blood supply and the skin and muscle. And then they put that into my jaw and basically reconstructed a new jaw from the bone, and then the roof of my mouth is now the skin and muscle from my shoulder.
Wow.
Which is just insane. It was a 16-hour surgery. I can't comprehend how anyone can concentrate for 16 hours, let alone this kind of crazy surgery. Those doctors need a medal. It's just crazy. But yeah, unfortunately, they call it the flap, which is the new roof of the mouth, and that stays alive because they took the vein out of my back and connected it up through my neck with the veins in my neck. So the blood supply started not working about 5 days later, which they've never seen that before. If it ever fails, it's within 24 to 48 hours, and it's always because of a blood clot. But mine was 5 days later, and there was no clot, so no one knows why.
Right.
So they rushed me back into surgery for 10 hours and took the vein out of my leg and then connected that back up. So I think my dad says that was the longest day of his life. My parents had come over to visit, and they stayed for about 9 weeks, I think. And I think the surgeon said it would be about a 4 to 6 hour surgery, and 10 hours later my parents still hadn't heard anything. So I think they were quite worried, but I was having a nice sleep, so I was okay. Yeah.
So when you woke up, what was it like when you woke up from that, that 16-hour surgery the first time?
Yeah. Well, I had a tracheostomy, which is a breathing tube in your neck. So I couldn't talk, which was quite stressful. So I woke up quite disorientated after all of that anesthetic and the sedation and all of that, and very, very sleepy. Just, I mean, I knew where I was and I knew what had happened. I wasn't that confused, but being in a lot of pain and not really knowing all the details and not being able to talk was quite traumatizing. Yeah, I definitely remember that aspect. I feel like I would have struggled less if I had been able to talk. But then again, it was so swollen. I don't know if I would have been able to say anything that was understandable, even if I could talk. So maybe it was a good thing.
When you looked in the mirror, like what was the first thoughts that you had in your mind about, obviously you had chemo and so you were recovering from that, right? And then you go into surgery and then all of a sudden, your appearance. And I know, I think there's difference, obviously, biologically, men and women with, appearance as well. And I feel like sometimes, unfortunately, with the media and stuff, women are held to a different standard when it comes down to appearance and things like that. So you tend to see females take that a little more sensitively, which I totally get. And, and it's a sense of pride and everything when it comes down to being a woman and being beautiful and all those things. When you see like that transformation happen, obviously you're swollen from surgery and everything looks different. Did you have a chance to process a little bit of that as you were slowly the swelling was starting to go down and you just noticed things looked a little different?
I don't know about process. I think I was definitely, I think probably my parents had told me it was quite swollen. So I was prepared for it being quite bad and I could feel it. Mm-hmm. It felt so big. So I was very, I think having, blogged about it all the time and being very open with that, I was very keen on just seeing what I had to work with and, kind of coming to terms with it. And yeah, I think I'm very action-based person. So I just want to know what I'm going to deal with and I'll work out a way to deal with it. So to be honest, I look at pictures of me then and just remember myself then. I think I get again a coping mechanism. I kind of compartmentalize it. I just see this poor thing who was very beaten and battered and bruised, and I just want to give her a hug and tell her it'll be okay. Mm-hmm. But I do slightly disassociate it from where I am now.
Right.
I think it's a sort of a subconscious coping mechanism. But yeah, I was also quite interested in the whole thing. I mean, this procedure, the surgery, was just incredible. So I was quite keen to see what had happened and what I looked like. Mm-hmm. And actually, they had prepared me before I went in. They thought they might have to cut open through my face. And so I was worried that I'd wake up with a big sort of cut down my face.
Right.
And when I found out that they had somehow managed to do it all through the roof of my mouth without cutting the outside of my face, that was a huge relief. So I think because I had prepared to potentially wake up with a huge, cut down my face, and then to see that hadn't happened, mm-hmm. I was quite relieved. So it was almost, although it was horrible, it was almost like, oh wow, well, okay, at least they haven't damaged the outside of my face. Yeah. Lucky. Well done, surgeons.
Yeah, you can hide what's on the inside, right? As long as there's not a big cut down the side of your face.
Exactly. Yeah. The things that bother us, I don't know.
Right, exactly. So going through all of that, it's one thing for you to deal with everything, right? And like you said, you kind of compartmentalize it a little bit, which I think is healthy in a way, because if you can always revisit that compartment and deal with it and then step away if you need to as things progress. And it hasn't been that long ago. So,
yeah,
as you progress through life, I'm sure there'll be moments where you go back and revisit certain things. Whenever people, like say your family, your friends start to get around you, or started showing up to visit you in the hospital and everything, and they take a look at you, and then to them, obviously you look very different. And I think sometimes the look on someone else's face can really scare you a little bit, or it can make you feel a different way, because you're not necessarily getting judged in a bad way, but you're seeing the reaction it's having on them and everything. How did people treat you when you were recovering from your surgery and your chemo? Because obviously you lost all your hair, I'm assuming, with your chemo and everything. And then you go through the surgery right after that, and your face is swollen and you can't see and all these other things. Like, how do people treat you during your recovery period?
I think with the sort of like losing hair with chemo and that kind of thing. So I'm a bit of a control freak, I guess. So I was like, I'm shaving my head before I lost my hair. I had a hair shaving party. My friends came over, we shaved my head. So I was like, yeah, actually, I really like being bald. It's definitely what I want to be doing.
Right.
So I think like with that, like, yeah, I kind of tried to own it. So I guess I didn't quite get there wasn't a sympathy element in that. And in terms of post-surgery, I think my parents were quite good. I think they're quite pragmatic. I think I probably get some of that from them. But they were never. I think it's quite hard when you get sympathy from people, when people look at you and they sort of feel sorry for you.
Right.
So my parents definitely didn't do that, and they were just sort of there, which was great. But I also although I was quite big on putting those photos on social media so people could see, I didn't really want people to see me while I was struggling so much. So I didn't let anyone visit me when I was in hospital. It was just kind of too much to have to put on. Oh, as well, I couldn't talk, so it's a bit of a useless conversation. I'm useless when I can't talk. I get so frustrated to madly write down notes. But yeah, so I purposefully tried not to see anyone when I was at my worst. I think people are very different. Some people want to have people around them to sort of, I don't know, keep them occupied or just have that support. For me, I don't know if it's got to do with being an only child growing up, but I very much deal with things on my own. So it was great having my parents there, but I kind of tried to, I don't know, maybe that was protecting myself from having these kinds of reactions from friends. But my housemates certainly saw me, and they were just fantastic. I think you really find how great your friends are when you go through something like this.
Right.
And I've certainly surrounded myself with some fantastic people who really are incredible. But the funny thing is that all through that, I think because it clearly looked like there was something wrong with me, like I had a huge swollen face. So yeah, that was there was no getting around that. But I think I struggle quite a bit now with people's reactions, and I look great.
Yeah, you do.
Looking at where I was, in March last year, but I don't have any teeth. My face is quite sort of sunken, and I do look a bit different to how I used to. And I do feel like I have to sort of tell people why always. And I do often get some people asking me what's wrong with my face, and saying that I've got a cleft palate. I don't know why people feel the need to tell people that they have a cleft palate. I feel sorry for people who do, but
right.
But I think that's quite hard when I just kind of want to move away from it. When I got cancer, I thought it could be something that I could entirely put in a box and leave in the cupboard and never look at it again. But I've definitely found that it's become a part of my life now, in a positive way. I just remember the good bits that have come from it. But it would, I think with something on your face, and as you say, like your looks, they are important, and it's a snapshot of you is your face. And to sort of know that my face looks quite different and have to explain that to people, I think I'm finding it hard now to get away from it. But I guess hopefully I'll be getting teeth within the next 6 months, which is just so exciting.
Right.
I think once that happens, then yeah, I think it'll be easier to deal with other people's reactions, because hopefully I will look quote unquote normal.
Right. So dealing with the new identity, I think a lot of people that I've interviewed, all of us too, and myself included, we have like a pre-cancer identity and a post-cancer identity. And, there's an extra layer to yours, obviously, because they're more physical, like, us that I had an internal surgery and I had chemo and everything, and you look weird and different and all that while you're going through the chemo stuff. But afterwards, nobody really can tell, but you have an extra layer to your story where you're having to, the physical side of everything, that takes a little longer with, all the things that you have to do and stuff. And it's just curious to me, like, with that extra layer and the way I look at brokenness and adversity is it challenges us, and we're all, obviously it was bad luck that you got cancer. You didn't do anything to cause your cancer. Same thing as well, right? Like I was perfectly healthy before that, but this time has given you, a huge platform, obviously, and using your sickness, your disease, the physical struggles, all those things like that for good. And and I always feel like I won like the bad lottery when it came down to my health and stuff. But, in a way, when I look back on it now, it's created so many positive things for me. And then it's allowed me to help so many other people. And, it all kind of goes back to whatever my lowest moment was, so I'm sure you probably had a moment that was, or several that were your absolute lowest moments. And when you get to that level now, obviously you're on the way back up. You said you got things to look forward to. You look great, by the way. Like everything is kind of slowly moving back up a little bit. If you could go back to maybe like one of your lowest moments and tell everyone, because and the reason I want you to talk about this is because people that are listening right now, they may be at that lowest moment, and you guys may be able to connect on something like that. And then they have so much to look forward to, because, your situation could be a lot worse than other people's out there as well too, So tell us what your lowest moment was, and how are you able to kind of dig out of that valley and really work your way back up to where you are now?
So I sort of spoke a bit about how I was very pragmatic with my diagnosis, and I sort of didn't really let that get to me. And even through the hardest times of chemo, I sort of got through without sort of losing hope, I guess. It was horrible, and there were some really, really hard and dark days, but I could do that. Like I could just about survive that. But certainly the one time when it did start to feel like it was just the world was getting on top of me was definitely probably after the second surgery. When I had the first surgery, it was horrible, but I was sort of starting to get a bit better. And then when I went in, and I guess when you cut into something that's already swollen and damaged, it makes it a whole lot worse.
Right.
So after that second surgery, again, without being able to talk, without being able to without basically losing your independence, like I couldn't really move. I had drains coming out of me. I couldn't close my mouth. I couldn't even have a sip of water. I couldn't breathe through my nose. I still can't breathe through my nose, which is hard for sleeping. But I basically, I couldn't sleep, could hardly, my mouth was so dry because I was having to breathe through it all night. And to get a little bit gross with details, I was just dribbling all the time, because I guess there's a lot of sort of fluid and all sorts of stuff in there as the swelling sort of going down, and I couldn't close my mouth. So I just I was in a lot of pain. I was so swollen. I was going forward, which I was happy with, and suddenly I'd gone so far backwards, and I just honestly didn't think it would ever get better. I couldn't see. It just felt like day after day after day of nothing getting better, and I had such wonderful sort of support in the nurses, and my physio was great, and my parents being there. But I just wondered how I would ever get better, how I would ever move past those few days.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, really.
What was
really
it?
hard.
So really, was it a support? Was it your faith? Was it your family? What was it that really got you through those darkest days?
There were a few things. So I got my mum to take photos every day, or I took selfies, and I think that was really, really important, because I could look back at the previous photo, and when I thought nothing had got better, I could see that it actually had, like, swelling had gone down. So having that as a kind of, because when you're stuck in it, it's really hard to find any perspective.
Right.
So actually being able to have those photos to have perspective. And I also, so for me, like, moving forward, action, doing things, that is how I cope. So I made an effort to write down one thing every day that was progress. So even like, because I say it's sort of like 4 days after surgery, 4 to 5 days, that it's at its worst. So even post-surgery, we're still getting worse and worse and worse.
Right.
But I made an effort to write down just one tiny, tiny little thing that was progress, or that was positive, or one good thing that had happened that day. And when I then felt that nothing had got better, I could say, oh, actually, 2 days ago, this happened. I got my drains out. So that was actually a good progress step.
Right.
And like, having my parents visit me every day was just amazing. And they just sit with me while I frantically wrote, and they told me to just relax, stop writing, just sit. Okay. Mum would read me a chapter of a book every day.
Okay.
So that was really nice. And my surgeons came and visited me every day, because I was on very close watch after it had failed at first.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt important, I guess. I felt like I was being looked after and people were listening to me. And even when it was really hard, there were people there trying to make it better.
So it sounds like to me, I love what you did, like the photo thing, and the almost like the gratitude moments you were writing down, little goals, little things that you were accomplishing. And I truly believe gratitude is the key to happiness. No matter how terrible of a situation you may be in, you can always think like, of one thing or two things that you're thankful for in a way, even though it's just tough, like, hey, I got my drains out today. This is swelling's going down here. I look a little different in this photo, like that. You started doing things, which I think is amazing, because not everybody has the insight or knows themselves well enough to do things like that. So I love that, because maybe someone listening right now who is like, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to actually start jotting some things down each day now as I move forward. And when you look back onto your life, and I tell everyone on this a lot, you either need to be taught or reminded. And it sounds like you were already taught on how to, self-persevere, like just really push past things, but you just had to remind yourself every day of a little thing. And that's what you did, which I think is so amazing. And, if you, again, I know you had a lot done, but I mean, here we are a year later, and other people can't see you right now at the moment, but you have a ton of life coming through your eyes and your face, and you're happy, and like you give people a lot to look forward to, I think, in a way, and give people a lot of hope. As you kind of progress a lot out of the worst times and you're into your life now, what's your life like now? Not that, well, did you kind of coming down off the roller coaster a little bit, and you're establishing a normal life and you have things that you're looking forward to? What's it like now with, your relationships and your friends and your family and your job? Like now that you're coming out of the post-cancer situation?
I really hate this term. This is just a personal thing. People talk about the new normal, and it always really bothered me. I think because, again, me wanting to be in control of everything, like, cancer can't change me. Only I can change me. So I very much as I can, I don't want to let it change my life or what I do or what I want to do. But having said that, I'm of my own choice, of course, I'm definitely doing a lot of work on sort of shuffling life and learning now what I'm capable of. And I am still in limbo because I do have to go back into surgery to get my implants, and it'll still be another 6 months or whatever until I've got teeth again. And so I'm still in it, but I mean, work has been amazing. They've been so supportive, and they've let me have a phased return. But I struggle to do 5 days a week in the office now. So I work from home one day, which is, not a big thing, but making that little change makes such a difference to me actually being able to have a life, which is really good. It's definitely a minefield. You get this thing of like, oh, well, you're all better now. And yeah, I am
right.
all better. But I think, it's definitely, people expect that now it's over, that everything's as it was and you keep doing all of that. And it's definitely like, my friends are incredible. I know a lot of people often like lose friends over cancer. I mean, my boyfriend broke up with me during chemo in a not very nice way. So I guess that's a change in my life.
Oh man.
But,
don't say that. We're going to hunt him down on the internet and who he is.
Yeah, it was not very nice. Anyway, so that's a change, but I've still got all my fantastic friends. And actually, I don't want to say that cancer is good because it's not. Obviously, we all know that. But I have so many amazing friends who I've got from cancer and from my cancer Twitter community. Those people are just the most supportive and uplifting people, and the friends I've made through cancer. So I really feel like I have such a rich group of friends who are so understanding. They never make me feel like I'm not capable of doing things, or that I'm not welcome because I had to kind of opt out of life for a year and a half. They're all excited to have me back. So really, really lucky about that. But I'm definitely starting. I think I was starting to do this before I got cancer anyway. I think it's probably something about coming up to being 30.
Right.
But I'm sort of starting to rethink my priorities and what's important to me and how I want to live my life and, what I want to do. So that's just kind of come tenfold now that I'm like, well, I could have died, so really rethink it all, find your new purpose and all of that. So it's a minefield. Post-cancer life is hard work, but I've certainly got some very amazing understanding and supportive people, and my work as well. So I feel very, very grateful. Certainly taught me how lucky I am to have just such fantastic people.
So this is a chapter of your life. It's not your entire life, right? So if you could give some advice to a young adult who's listening right now, who's going through cancer, whether it's osteosarcoma or some other cancer, or maybe one or two things that you would recommend for them, or pieces of advice that you may give to them that's unique to your situation?
Firstly, I would definitely recommend, and this is very different to what people would usually say, but I highly recommend getting connected on, say, social media.
Okay.
just knowing that there are people out there who get it. And the whole cancer club thing, like, it quite helps sometimes. Not that I only want to be surrounded by people who have had cancer, but sometimes it really helps, especially if I didn't actively know anyone who had cancer. So I didn't really, in my normal life, I didn't really have people. I mean, my father actually had prostate cancer about a year or two before I got diagnosed, a year before, I think. So I have him, but I didn't sort of have friends my age who were going through it so much. So I hadn't really used Twitter before this, but now I could not imagine having done this without those people. They also helped a lot through the dark days where they were just really cared about me, and they really check in, and they want to know how you're going. So I would definitely recommend jumping on social media and trying to connect with other people who maybe don't even have the same cancer as you, but cancer is a great leveler of sort of playing fields, I guess, because everyone's experience with it is so different, but there's always something that you can relate to someone with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is really good. And the other thing that I would say, which I wish someone had said to me, is that it's okay if things don't go according to plan. So I couldn't finish one of my chemo drugs, and I thought, oh no, I'm a failure. My body's not good enough. Like, I can't get all my chemo, so clearly that means it's gonna be bad for me. And they were really good with checking everything along the way. So I had heart ECGs to check that, because my one of my chemo damaged my heart, another one was for my kidneys.
Right.
So I kept having kidney tests, and my kidneys started failing, not failing, but getting quite close to having kidney failure. And they bounced back now fine because they stopped that drug. But yeah, so that it was better to have less of that drug and not have to have dialysis for my whole life. So that's good. But I thought that was really bad. And then I found out that that's completely normal and it's expected. Like, you're given a schedule or a regime, and not many people actually can finish it, because this chemo gives you, it's just so much of it, and it's so hectic. Yeah, exactly. I think one of my drugs, I have the most that I could possibly have of it in my whole entire life. So they really chock you full of it. But I've got two friends who I was treated with, and both of them couldn't finish one of their drugs as well. And I've got another girl who I know who had the same treatment, and her chemo wasn't working. So they actually switched her to another regime. But being told that your chemo isn't working is terrifying to hear. But I guess, there are mostly always more options. And as long as you've got options, then you're doing okay.
I love that. It's okay if things don't go according to plan. Obviously, this whole situation wasn't a part of your, intentional life plan, but it's, in my opinion, like, it's only made you like a better person, probably, like, it's only made you, a more beautiful person, I think, as well, too, because not only, do you have like the way you look, but it's who you are. And people really respond to real people more, I think. The fake stuff that we see all over the internet and television and stuff, it only goes so deep, but real people are what, to me, like, that's the beauty of life, is connecting with real people going through real situations. And, your situation may be better or worse than someone else's, but your attitude that you have, to me, was one of the main reasons that I wanted to chat with you, because it's contagious. And you have every reason in the world not to be unhappy. We all do. We all can pick a reason, pick a thing, a situation, a bad mistake in life, or whatever else to be unhappy with. But, for all you've gone through, you're
you're doing really well, and your attitude is phenomenal. I know it's, you have your moments because you're a human being, right? You can't always be as happy as you are right now, but you're doing really well. And that to me is, like I said, it's contagious, it's inspiring. And, I'm so excited to think about the rest of your life, because I guess the one good thing about getting cancer when you're younger is, if things work out for you, you have so much life left to live more intentionally, and you have your story to share with some. I mean, so many people are going to get impacted by you, and their life is going to be better because of an unfortunate circumstance that you overcame. And to me, that's the beauty of life and the beauty of community and connecting with people. And I'm excited for you. And this is our first time talking, but I'm really excited for everything else that you have in your life. You've got a great, great life ahead of you. And yeah, absolutely.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you, and just listen to you talk, and I'm saying this because I went through the same thing. It's been 6 years for me. And each year it gets something kind of gets uncovered that you're like, oh, I thought I dealt with that already, but maybe it's deeper in that box that you put things in. So it gets better. And, but it's still, I don't say it gets worse every year, but there's something that gets brought up. But that's life as you deal with things, and you seem like you deal with things really healthy, and you want to attack it as much as you can at a time. And then when you're done, put it away and then go back at it and stuff as well too. But I'm so glad that we had a chance to connect and talk. And thank you for taking time out of your day to day to do all this. If our listeners want to connect with you and dig in deeper with you, or maybe have a specific question for you, why don't you tell them a little bit or a few ways to connect with you? I know you have a blog and you're on social media and all that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely just love to, I always say this, I'm really glad to talk to you, although I wish that we didn't have to connect.
Right.
Because that means that we both got cancer. But yeah, definitely, if anyone has questions about any of it, just more than happy always to answer them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so my blog is thecancerchronicles.blog, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at The Cancer Crons, CHRONS.
Well, Jen, you're a true rock star, and I hope we get to meet one day. I love meeting people I've interviewed. It's one of my favorite things. So if you ever make it over the States, and if I ever get over that way, it's on my bucket list. So
definitely.
Well, perfect. Well, I'll put links to all of your blogs and your social media sites and everything. If people want to reach out to you, they can connect with you that way. And thank you for being such a great guest again. And I'm going to stay in touch with you and let everyone, when the next couple of months, when your implants come in and things like that, we'll post some more pictures of that as well too. And I'll just keep following along with you on your journey. And again, we appreciate you taking time from doing what you're doing today to be a part of the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you.
We appreciate you spending time with us on today's episode and encourage you to continue the conversation to help you keep pushing forward. For more resources based on today's episode, as well as ways to recommend a guest and connect to Truett personally, head over to 1%podcast.com. Be sure to join us next time for more stories of inspiration right here with Truett Taylor on the 1% Podcast.